Thanksgiving was supposed to feel warm, the smell of turkey, the flicker of candles, the clatter of silverware against china. Instead, it felt like a courtroom, and I was the accused. My brother Daniel raised his glass, his smile sharp as a knife. "No place for losers," he announced, loud enough for the entire table to hear. The room froze for a heartbeat. Then my parents did the unthinkable. They nodded. Not a protest, not a word of defense, just silent agreement that cut deeper than Daniel's taunt. My throat tightened, my hands trembling under the tablecloth. I wanted to scream, to demand why my own family saw me as less. Instead, I whispered, "I understand," and slipped out into the cold November night. What they didn't know was that the truth I carried could tear their perfect dinner apart, and 5 days later, it did. I grew up in a house where the walls seemed to whisper favoritism. Our two-story home in the suburbs of Boston had apple trees in the backyard and a fireplace that was always crackling during winter. To outsiders, we looked like the perfect family: a hard-working father, a loving mother, two children raised under one roof. But if you stepped closer, you'd notice the cracks. My name is Olivia, and I was the firstborn. From the beginning, responsibility clung to me like a second skin. My parents, Richard and Ellen, would often say, "You're the older one, Olivia. You can handle it," which sounded harmless, but those words became the justification for giving my younger brother Daniel everything shiny, everything new, while I learned to live with hand-me-downs. I remember birthdays. Mine were simple: a chocolate cake from the local bakery, a card signed in neat handwriting, maybe a sweater that Mom found on sale. But Daniel's birthdays? They were events. Balloons, clowns, rented halls, and piles of gifts wrapped in glossy paper. When I asked why, Mom would smile apologetically. "He's younger. We want to make his childhood special." Special. That word haunted me. In school, I worked hard. Straight A's, honor roll, volunteering at the library. But when I brought my report card home, Dad would glance at it for half a second before turning to Daniel. "How did you do, son?" Daniel, who barely scraped B's, would get a pat on the back and praise for trying his best. Meanwhile, my achievements slipped into silence, like they weren't worth celebrating. Daniel grew up knowing he was the golden child. He wore that title like a crown, smirking when teachers compared us, shrugging when relatives whispered how lucky he was to be so loved. And the truth? He was handsome, charming, and quick with words. While I spent afternoons buried in books, he breezed through with charisma. People liked him instantly, and my parents, they adored him endlessly. When it came time for college, I had dreamed of studying literature. I loved stories, the way words could hold a universe inside a single sentence. But tuition was expensive, and Dad sat me down at the kitchen table with a heavy sigh. "Olivia, maybe college isn't the right path. You're practical. You can find work with your hands. Daniel, though he has potential, he's talking about law school. We need to save for that." "How?" So just like that, my dreams were sacrificed on the altar of Daniel's future. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I told myself it didn't matter, that I could still build a life without a degree. But inside, something cracked. I found work first at a diner, then at a small mechanic's office doing bookkeeping, and eventually learning trade skills. My hands got calloused, my clothes smelled of grease and metal, but I earned my independence. I learned to budget, to save, to build something small and steady. Meanwhile, Daniel soared on the wings of everyone else's sacrifices. He got into a prestigious law school, and my parents threw a party bigger than any graduation. I remember standing in the corner, holding a glass of water while people toasted to his brilliance. Not one person asked me how I was doing. Still, I tried. I cooked dinner when Mom was tired, fixed the leaky faucet when Dad complained, babysat cousins without being asked. But none of it erased the fact that Daniel's name was always spoken with pride, while mine was mentioned with pity. "Olivia means well," Mom once told an aunt at Christmas, "but Daniel, oh, Daniel's going to make us proud." That sentence burned itself into my memory. The older I grew, the clearer it became. I wasn't just overshadowed, I was invisible. My parents didn't mean to be cruel. I think in their hearts, they thought they were being practical, pouring resources into the child who looked like he could shine the brightest. But in doing so, they dimmed me until I questioned whether I had any light at all. By the time I turned 30, Daniel was already working at a prestigious law firm downtown. He wore tailored suits, drove a black BMW, and bragged about the circles he moved in: politicians, CEOs, people with names that turned heads. At family gatherings, my parents would beam as he told story after story about his glamorous life. And me? I would sit quietly, eating mashed potatoes, pretending not to notice when Mom avoided mentioning my job. When relatives asked, I'd say I was managing fine, though the truth was, I had already begun building something extraordinary in secret, something even Daniel couldn't dream of. But at that time, my secret was still mine alone. All the world saw was a woman who worked with her hands, who didn't have a college degree, who lived simply, and for my parents, that was enough reason to nod in agreement when Daniel mocked me at the Thanksgiving table. Because in their eyes, Daniel was the Sunday, and I was just the shadow he cast. Thanksgiving had always been my favorite holiday, or at least, it used to be. The smell of roasted turkey, pumpkin pie cooling on the counter, laughter echoing through the house. It was the one time a year I could pretend my family was whole, that we were like everyone else. This year I arrived early, clutching a pie I'd baked myself. My hands were trembling as I set it down on the counter. Mom gave me a tight smile, barely glancing at the pie before fussing over Daniel's wine bottles. "Your brother brought a $200 Cabernet," she said proudly, her voice lilting as though the wine itself proved his brilliance. I forced a smile. "That's nice, Mom. I thought we'd all enjoy something homemade." She didn't respond. When we sat down at the long wooden table, the candles flickering, Daniel was in his element. He wore a navy suit jacket like it was stitched to his skin, his golden hair slicked back, his watch gleaming under the light. Beside him sat his girlfriend, elegant, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who carried an aura of expensive perfume and quiet power. Dad carved the turkey while Mom bustled, pouring wine, fussing with napkins. Everyone was cheerful. Everyone except me. I tried to make small talk, asking about Daniel's job, his cases, even complimenting his girlfriend's dress. She nodded politely but didn't say much. Daniel, however, was more than happy to fill the silence with stories about his incredible year, the deals he'd closed, the clients he'd impressed. Then, out of nowhere, his voice cut through the chatter. "Actually," Daniel said, raising his glass, "I'd like to make a toast." The room fell silent. Forks paused midair. "To family," he said, his smile curving upward. "To success, to strength, to making this house a place of winners." Then he turned, eyes locking on me. His smile sharpened into a blade. "And no place for losers." The words dropped like stones in water, rippling outward until all sound seemed to vanish. My breath caught in my throat. I searched my parents' faces, desperate for them to correct him, to say something, anything. But Mom nodded, as though agreeing. Dad cleared his throat, uncomfortable, but said nothing. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Excuse me?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Daniel chuckled. "Don't take it personally, Liv. I'm just saying. Look around. Success is what matters. You can't expect to sit at this table forever when you've chosen." He waved his hand dismissively. "That kind of life." "That kind of life?" I repeated, my voice growing sharp. "You mean working hard, earning honestly, supporting myself without needing handouts?" He smirked. "Come on. We all know you barely scrape by. A mechanic, right? Fixing cars, getting grease under your nails. You think that's something to brag about?" My chest tightened. The room spun. I turned to Mom, silently pleading. But she only sighed and said softly, "Olivia, don't start. Tonight should be perfect. Don't ruin it." Perfect. That word again. Always for Daniel. Always at my expense. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. My hands shook as I stood. "I understand," I said quietly. My voice cracked, but I held my head high. "I won't ruin your perfect night." "Liv," Dad began, but I was already walking away, each step echoing like a drumbeat. Behind me, I heard Daniel laugh under his breath. See? Sensitive as always. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The cold November air hit me like a slap when I stepped outside. My breath clouded in the night sky as tears blurred my vision. I walked to my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to demand why my family had turned me into a joke. Instead, I drove home in silence, my pie still sitting untouched on their counter. That night, I sat on my sofa, staring at the gift I'd bought for Mom and Dad, a cashmere scarf and a leather-bound journal. I had imagined their smiles, the warmth of giving. Now the gifts mocked me from the table, just like Daniel's words. The worst part wasn't what he said, it was that my parents agreed. Their silence, their nods cut deeper than Daniel's insult ever could, and, as I sat in the dim light of my living room, I realized something. I could let their cruelty define me, or I could hold on to the truth I'd hidden for years, the truth that one day, very soon, would turn their mockery into shame. Because they didn't know who I really was. And 5 days later, they would find out. When I left my parents' house that night, the sting of Daniel's words didn't fade easily. They replayed in my mind like a broken record. No place for losers. It would have been easier to bear if he had been joking. But his smirk, my mother's nod, my father's silence, they weren't jokes, they were convictions. And yet, as I sat alone in my living room, I felt a small flame inside me. Because I knew something they didn't. Something I had kept hidden for almost a decade. The truth was, I wasn't the loser they thought I was. It began 10 years ago. I was 24, exhausted from working double shifts at a diner and bookkeeping at a small mechanic's garage just to cover rent. My hands smelled like oil and coffee. My shoes wore out faster than I could afford to replace them. I told myself this was my life. Paycheck to paycheck, invisible to the world. Until I met Rachel. Rachel was a financial advisor at a small downtown office where I once fixed the leaking pipes. She was sharp, with auburn hair tied back, glasses perched on her nose, and a voice that carried conviction. I remember wiping grease from my hands when she walked in, holding out a paper cup. "Coffee? You look like you could use it." We ended up talking. Not small talk, real talk. About dreams. About how most people never break free from the cycle of survival. She told me she had seen clients make millions not because they were born rich, but because they learned patience. Money is a tool, she said, her eyes steady on mine. Even if you only have a little, if you treat it right, it grows. Anyone can build wealth if they start early and stay consistent. Her words stuck to me like glue. That night I opened my first savings account, with barely a 500. It felt laughable, but Rachel encouraged me. She taught me about index funds, compounding interest, and the discipline of saving more than I spent. She didn't speak in riddles or jargon. She explained like she believed in me, something my own family never did. So I lived frugally. I cut unnecessary expenses, worked extra shifts, skipped nights out. I invested slowly, quietly. While Daniel flaunted designer suits and vacations to Europe, I drove my used car and cooked at home. Year by year, my small investments grew. By my late 20s, I had enough to buy a modest rental property. It wasn't much, just a duplex in a quiet neighborhood, but it brought steady income. I reinvested every cent, adding more properties, diversifying my portfolio. I became obsessed, not with money itself, but with the freedom it promised. I studied financial books late at night, scribbling notes in margins, learning from every mistake. Sometimes I'd meet Rachel for coffee, and she'd check in like a mentor, pushing me to stay the course. By the time I turned 33, I wasn't just surviving. I had built a portfolio worth over $1 million, stocks, real estate, and a retirement fund that could make most people gasp. And yet, I never changed my lifestyle. I still wore the same boots. I still fixed my own leaky faucet. I still brought homemade pie to Thanksgiving dinner. Why? Because I didn't want anyone, especially my family, to look at me differently. I didn't want Daniel sniffing around, or my parents suddenly pretending to respect me because of numbers in a bank account. I wanted to be valued for who I was, not what I had. So I stayed quiet. But that silence came with a cost. My parents continued to see me as just Olivia, the daughter who never quite made it. Daniel mocked me openly, bragging about his life in glossy detail while mine remained invisible. I let them believe it, because the truth, my truth, was mine alone. Until Thanksgiving night, when Daniel humiliated me at the table. That was the first time I felt the urge to break the silence, to look them in the eye and say, I am not who you think I am. I am not your burden. I am not your failure. I am stronger, smarter, and richer than you realize. But I didn't. Not yet. Because I wasn't ready to share the secret I had nurtured for so long. The secret that gave me strength every time they tried to belittle me. I didn't know then that fate would force the truth out sooner than I wanted. That within days, my carefully guarded secret would be exposed. Not by me, but by someone else. And when that happened, the look on Daniel's face, on my parents' faces, would be priceless. They called me a loser, but I was about to show them what losing really looked like. 5 days after Thanksgiving, I still couldn't shake Daniel's words. They clung to me like smoke after a fire, seeping into every breath. No place for losers. My own brother had raised a glass to my humiliation, and my parents nodded along. But anger wasn't the only thing stirring inside me. Something else gnawed at the edges of my mind. The way Daniel's girlfriend had sat there, silent, her sharp eyes flickering between me and him. She hadn't laughed. She hadn't joined in. If anything, she had looked uncomfortable. That night, scrolling through social media, I found Daniel's latest post. Him and her, dressed in black tie attire, clinking champagne glasses at a downtown gala. His caption, "To the future." I zoomed in on the picture. The woman's auburn hair was tied back in a sleek bun. Her glasses glinted under the chandelier light. My heart stopped. Rachel. The same Rachel who had handed me coffee 10 years ago. The same Rachel who taught me how to open my first investment account, who sat across from me in cafes explaining compounding interest like it was a love story. The woman who believed in me when no one else did. My breath hitched. I scrolled through more photos, my pulse racing. There was no mistake. It was her. Daniel's girlfriend was Rachel. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the screen, torn between disbelief and dread. Memories flashed, Rachel encouraging me, telling me I wasn't foolish for dreaming. The pride in her eyes when I told her about buying my first duplex. She had been more than a mentor. She had been the first person outside of myself to see potential in me. And now, she was dating the brother who called me worthless. I couldn't keep it inside. My fingers flew across my phone. Me? Rachel? It's Olivia. Tell me this isn't true. For minutes, no reply. Then my phone buzzed. Rachel? Olivia? Wow. Small world, huh? I clenched my jaw. Small world? That was her response? Me. You're dating Daniel? My brother? Rachel. Yes. We met at a networking event. I didn't realize you were siblings at first, and then I wasn't sure how to bring it up. My chest tightened. So you knew. You knew at Thanksgiving and said nothing. Rachel. It wasn't my place. Besides, you asked me years ago never to tell anyone about your investments. I respected that. Her words cut deep. She was right. I had begged her to keep my secret, terrified my family would treat me differently if they knew. But now, it wasn't just about secrecy, it was betrayal. My mentor. My anchor. Sitting at the same table, holding the hand of the brother who mocked me. Me, you don't understand. He's not who you think he island. There was a pause before she replied. Rachel. And you don't understand either. I've seen his ambition. He's powerful, Olivia. He wants to change the world. He talks about you sometimes, though not kindly. My stomach churned. What did he say? Rachel. That you're jealous. That you drag the family down. That you'll never be more than what you are now. Tears burned my eyes. Jealous? Dragging them down? Was that really how he painted me to strangers? I typed furiously. Me. Rachel. You know me. You know what I've built. I am not a loser. Her typing bubbles blinked, then vanished. For minutes, nothing. I nearly threw the phone across the room. Finally. Rachel. I know who you are, Olivia. I know what you've accomplished. But he doesn't. And maybe Maybe he needs to know. I froze. Did she mean she'd tell him? My heart thudded. Me? No. Don't. I don't want him or my parents to know. I don't want them using me for money. Promise me. This time, the reply came quickly. Rachel. All right. I promise. For now, for now. Those two words felt like a trap door beneath my feet. The following days blurred. I went to work, fixed pipes, balanced invoices, tried to keep my head down. But everywhere I turned, Daniel's shadow loomed. My coworkers showed me an article in the paper. Young lawyer rising. Daniel Carter's impressive track record. There he was, smiling, confident, with Rachel on his arm. Every headline praised him. Every whisper in my family's circle lauded his success. And me? Still invisible. But what unsettled me most wasn't his face in the paper. It was Rachel's. She had once sat across from me, sketching charts on napkins, her voice steady. You're patient, Olivia. That's your strength. Now she sat beside Daniel, silent while he mocked me, silent while my parents erased me. One evening, I called her. I couldn't stand the silence anymore. Rachel, I said as soon as she answered. Why him? She exhaled. Olivia, I didn't plan this. He's charming. He has connections. He makes me feel like I'm part of something big. Something big? My voice trembled. Do you know what he said about me? Do you know what he does to me? Her pause told me everything. She knew. Olivia, she said softly. You've always been strong on your own. But maybe it's time your family sees who you really are. Because if they don't, they'll never stop treating you like this. I gripped the phone tighter. Are you threatening to tell them? No. But maybe I'm warning you, she replied. Her voice wasn't unkind, but it was firm. Secrets don't stay buried forever. And Daniel, he's already asking questions. My heart sank, because I knew she was right. The secret I had built my life around, the shield that gave me peace, was crumbling. And if Daniel discovered it, if my parents discovered it, their greed would be unstoppable. I ended the call, my hands shaking. In that moment, one thing became clear. The war wasn't just between me and my brother anymore. Rachel was in the middle, and sooner or later, someone would light the match that would burn us all. It started as a whisper. A phone call here, a side comment there. Within days of Thanksgiving, the story had spread among our relatives. Daniel had to say something. Olivia's just not on his level. I heard it first from my cousin Beth, who called me out of the blue. Liv, I don't know if you want to hear this, but at dinner, Daniel really tore into you after you left. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, tore into me? He already humiliated me. Beth hesitated. It was worse after. He kept saying you're holding the family back, that you embarrass mom and dad when they introduce you, and your parents didn't defend you. They just let him talk. I gripped the phone until my knuckles whitened. And Rachel? What did she do? She looked furious. I thought she was going to say something, but she didn't. She just sat there. I thanked Beth and hung up, though the words clanged in my head like church bells. Embarrassment. Holding the family back. My parents' silence. It was one thing to be mocked. It was another to be turned into a family joke. 2 days later, Mom called. Her voice was syrupy, too sweet. Olivia, honey, you know Daniel didn't mean it. He just wants the best for this family. I laughed bitterly. The best? By calling me a loser in front of everyone? Don't exaggerate, she said quickly. It was just a toast. You're too sensitive. I wanted to scream. Too sensitive? The phrase felt like gasoline on fire. Mom, I said, my voice tight. Do you have any idea what it felt like? Sitting there while my own parents nodded? She paused. We didn't want to embarrass him in front of his girlfriend. You understand, right? That word again, understand? It was the same one I used when I excused myself from the table. Only this time, it made me sick. No, Mom, I said coldly. I don't understand at all. And I hung up. That evening, I went grocery shopping just to clear my head. The aisles smelled of cinnamon and pine, the artificial cheer of the holiday season. But even there, I couldn't escape it. An old neighbor, Mrs. Green, stopped me by the canned goods. Olivia, I heard about the Thanksgiving toast. My chest tightened. What did you hear? That Daniel is really shining and, well, some people just aren't meant for the spotlight. Her pitying smile made me want to throw the soup cans in my basket across the aisle. I forced a nod and escaped before she could say more. It was everywhere. Whispers, glances, the subtle pity of people who thought they knew the story. And every time, Rachel's face flashed in my mind. Sitting there, silent. Finally, I snapped. I called Rachel again. Why didn't you say anything? I demanded the moment she answered. Her sigh crackled through the line. Because it wasn't my place. Not your place? He called me a loser in front of you. In front of everyone. Her voice sharpened. Do you think I agreed with him? Do you think I didn't want to stand up? But Olivia, it's your family. I didn't want to blow up his dinner. You already blew it up, I hissed. Just by sitting there. Silence stretched. Then she said quietly, maybe you should have told them the truth a long time ago. I froze. What truth? You know what I mean, she said. About what you've built. About who you really are. They mock you because they think you're small. But if they knew, they'd use me. I cut her off. They'd smile, pretend to be proud, and then start asking for money. Daniel especially. Don't pretend you don't see that. Rachel's voice softened. You're right. But Olivia, secrets rot when they're kept too long. I ended the call without replying. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The whispers weren't just in my head anymore. They were in my family, my community, spreading like smoke. And Rachel was right about one thing. Secrets don't stay buried forever. But I also knew this, when the truth came out, it wouldn't save me. It would destroy them. And part of me, a part I barely recognized, wanted that. A few nights later, Dad called. Unlike Mom, his voice was gruff, practical. Olivia, you know your brother's under pressure. He's bringing Rachel around, making connections. We can't have you distracting from that. Distracting? I repeated, my throat dry. You're older, you can take it. Let him shine. That's what matters right now. Something inside me cracked. So I'm supposed to sit there, invisible, while you toast to his brilliance? While you nod when he calls me a loser? Dad cleared his throat. Don't twist my words. Families need unity. Don't make this harder. I laughed bitterly. Unity? You mean obedience. You don't want unity. You want silence. Olivia, don't call me again unless you're ready to see me for who I am. I snapped, slamming the phone down. My hands shook, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just the shadow. I was the storm they didn't see coming. It was the 5th night after Thanksgiving. I was in the garage, sleeves rolled up, grease smeared across my hands as I wrestled with a stubborn bolt on my truck. The cold November air bit at my skin, but work kept me grounded. Each clang of metal drowned out the whispers that had haunted me all week. Then I heard it, the low purr of an engine outside. Not just any car. A BMW. My stomach dropped before I even looked. Wiping my hands on a rag, I stepped into the yard. The headlights shut off, and 3 figures emerged. Daniel in his tailored coat, smug as ever. My mother, bundled in her green sweater. My father, wearing his worn-out baseball cap. They looked like a picture of unity. A family. But not mine. Olivia, Mom called, her arms opening as if we were long-lost friends. Oh, thank goodness. We've been so worried about you. I didn't move. Worried? That's rich. You didn't look too worried when you nodded at the table. Her smile faltered. Dad stepped forward, hands in his pockets. Come on, Liv. Don't be like that. We just came to talk. Daniel smirked, leaning against the car like it was a throne. Relax, sis. No need to get dramatic. Something inside me snapped. I marched closer, my voice low but sharp. Dramatic? You humiliated me in front of everyone. You called me a loser. And my parents agreed. Daniel chuckled, shrugging. It was just a toast. You're too sensitive. The same words Mom had used. I clenched my fists. Stop calling me sensitive. I'm not the one who needs validation from a dinner table. Mom's eyes darted nervously. Olivia, please. Let's not fight. We should go inside, have some tea. No. I blocked the doorway. Say whatever you came to say out here. For a moment, silence. Then Daniel pushed off the car, his smile turning silky, calculated. Fine. Look, I might have gone a little far at dinner. But we're family. We stick together. And since you've apparently done pretty well for yourself, my stomach twisted. What are you talking about? Daniel's eyes gleamed. Don't play dumb. Rachel told me. About your little investments. Your portfolio. Mom gasped, her eyes widening. Olivia, is that true? Dad's jaw tightened. How much are we talking about? I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Rachel, she had promised. For now, anger burned through my chest, but I didn't let it show. I folded my arms. So that's why you're here. Not to apologize. Not because you care. You want my money. Daniel grinned, unashamed. Think of it as helping the family. I've got projects lined up, investments that could double in no time. You put in the money, I handle the deals. We both win. No deal. My voice was ice. His smile slipped. Come on, Olivia, don't be selfish. Family comes first, right? I laughed, bitter and sharp. Family? You mocked me. You erased me. And now you're here because you think I'm your golden goose. Mom stepped forward, her voice pleading. Olivia, honey, we didn't know. We're proud of you. Truly. But think about what this could mean for Daniel. For all of us. Proud? I spat the word. You weren't proud when I worked double shifts. You weren't proud when I paid my bills alone. When I lived quietly without asking for anything. You only care now because you smell money. Dad's voice grew stern. Enough. He's your brother. He deserves your support. Deserves? My voice shook with fury. What has he ever done but take? You gave him everything, and he still stands here with his hand out. And you expect me to reward that? Daniel's face darkened, his smirk gone. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Don't act like you're better than me, Olivia. You're still the grease-stained mechanic. You're still nothing without people like Rachel showing you the ropes. I built myself. You just got lucky. The words hit like blows. But I didn't flinch. You built nothing, I said steadily. You've coasted on charm and our parents' favoritism. You've never worked for anything real. And luck? Luck doesn't explain 10 years of sacrifice. Luck doesn't explain nights spent studying while you partied. Luck doesn't explain the discipline it takes to build what I've built. His eyes narrowed, venomous. You'll regret talking to me like this. No, I said, my voice unwavering. For the first time, I don't regret anything. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Olivia, please, don't turn your back on us. I turned to her, my voice softer but resolute. I wanted a family. I begged for your approval my whole life. But tonight proves that you don't see me. You never did. You only see what I can give you. Silence fell. Dad looked away, ashamed but unyielding. Mom sobbed quietly. Daniel clenched his fists, seething. Finally, he spat. Fine. Keep your dirty money. See how far it gets you when you're all alone. He stormed back to the car. Dad followed, muttering about stubbornness. Mom lingered, reaching out once more. Olivia. I stepped back. Go. Her hand dropped. Slowly, she turned and climbed into the car. The engine roared to life, the headlights sweeping across my yard before fading into the night. I stood there, trembling, the November wind biting at my skin, and for the first time, I felt free. Not happy, not unbroken, but free. Inside, I sank onto the sofa. My heart pounded, my hands shook, but a strange calm settled over me. The confrontation I had dreaded my whole life had finally come, and I hadn't bent. The gift I'd bought for them still sitting on the table caught my eye. A scarf, a journal, tokens of love I once craved to give. I picked them up, opened the fireplace, and fed them to the flames. As the fire crackled, I whispered to myself, never again, because tonight, I wasn't the shadow anymore. I was the storm that finally broke. The night after my family stormed out of my yard, silence wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I sat on the sofa, staring at the dying embers in the fireplace. For the first time, I felt no urge to chase after them. No urge to explain, to beg, to apologize. Still, the ache was there. My parents, my brother gone. And what cut deepest wasn't their absence, but the fact that they had never really been there to begin with. Then my phone buzzed. Rachel. I hesitated, staring at her name on the screen. After what she'd done, after betraying my trust by telling Daniel about my portfolio, part of me wanted to let it ring. But another part, the part that still remembered her voice guiding me through my first investment, whispered that maybe I needed to hear her out. I swiped to answer. What do you want, Rachel? Her voice was low, trembling. Olivia. I broke up with him. The words hit me like a gust of wind. You what? I ended it with Daniel, she said. Last night, after he came home fuming from your place, yelling about you, demanding I explain everything. I couldn't do it anymore. I saw who he really is. Selfish, arrogant, entitled. I can't be with that. I leaned back, stunned. So what, you realized overnight that he's not Prince Charming? Her voice cracked. No. I realized I've been lying to myself for months. I thought his ambition meant vision. I thought his arrogance was just confidence. But last night, when he talked about you, the venom in his words, I knew. He doesn't love anyone but himself. A silence stretched between us. I wanted to feel vindicated, but all I felt was exhaustion. And what about me? I asked finally. You told him my secret. You promised me, Rachel. She exhaled sharply. I know. I broke your trust and I'm sorry. But I couldn't sit there at Thanksgiving while he dragged your name through the mud. Your parents nodded. Olivia. They let him shred you. I snapped. I wanted them to know who you really are. I thought it would make them respect you. Respect? My laugh was bitter. They don't respect me. They just see dollar signs now. I see you, she whispered. The words lodged in my chest. Simple, but weighted. We met the next day at a small coffee shop on the edge of town. Not the glitzy downtown bars Daniel paraded her through, just a place with chipped mugs and the smell of cinnamon rolls in the air. She was already there, sitting in a corner booth. When she looked up, her eyes were rimmed red. Olivia, she said softly. I slid into the seat across from her. Why did you come? Because I need you to know, she said, her voice steadying. I didn't fall for Daniel's world. I fell for the idea of belonging somewhere. But with him, it was always about appearances. With you, it was real. It always was. I shook my head. You're saying this now, after everything blew up. Yes, she admitted. Because sometimes it takes an explosion to see the truth. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The clatter of cups and low murmur of other customers filled the silence. Then she reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine. Olivia, I don't care about your money. I care about the woman who saved every penny when no one believed in her. The woman who built her life with discipline and grit. That's who I see. That's she faltered, then whispered, who I admire, who I respect. My throat tightened. No one in my family had ever said those words to me. Respect. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said quietly. Her eyes glistened. Then let me earn it. I won't ask for forgiveness overnight. But let me stand beside you. Let me choose you, not him. Weeks passed. Slowly, cautiously, we began to spend time together. Not in secret, not in fear, but in the small, ordinary ways that felt like breathing again. Walks in the park. Coffee after long work days. Rachel asking me about the books I loved, really listening when I spoke. Meanwhile, Daniel's anger boiled over. He posted vague rants on social media. Some people don't know loyalty, clearly aimed at both of us. My mother called, sobbing, begging me to fix this mess and convince Rachel to go back to him. My father accused me of betrayal. But for once, I didn't cave. One evening, Rachel and I sat on my porch, watching the sunset bleed orange and purple into the horizon. She slipped her hand into mine, tentative but sure. You know they'll never forgive us, she murmured. I squeezed her hand. Maybe I don't need their forgiveness anymore. She turned to me, her expression soft. So, what do you need? I looked at her, the woman who had once believed in me when no one else did, who had faltered but come back to choose me over everything Daniel promised. I need this, I said simply. A life where I'm not a shadow, where I'm not begging to be seen, where I'm with someone who actually sees me. Her smile trembled. but her grip on my hand tightened. Then that's what we'll build. Together. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living for scraps of approval. I was living for myself. And as Rachel rested her head on my shoulder that night, I knew I had chosen right. Because she hadn't just chosen to walk away from Daniel. She had chosen me. A year had passed since that Thanksgiving night, the night my brother raised a glass to mock me, and my parents nodded along. A year since they showed up at my doorstep, not with apologies, but with greed in their eyes. Now, I stood in the backyard of my new house, a modest 2-story, with white siding and enough land for a small garden. In the soil, young apple trees swayed gently, their roots just beginning to take hold. I planted them myself, each one a reminder of the backyard from my childhood, the one where I had once felt invisible. But here, in this home, nothing about me was invisible anymore. Rachel stepped out onto the porch, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "They're growing," she said, nodding at the trees. I smiled, taking a mug from her hand. "So are we." We sat on the porch steps, sipping coffee in silence, the crisp morning air carrying the scent of fresh earth. My phone buzzed on the railing beside me. A message from Mom. "We miss you. Please call." For a long moment I stared at it. The old Olivia would have picked up immediately, desperate for a scrap of validation. But now, I simply turned the phone face down. Rachel noticed. "You don't have to shut them out forever," she said gently. "I know," I replied. "But I'm not ready to open that door again. Not unless they see me for who I am. Not for what I can give them." She touched my hand, warm and steady. "Then keep it closed, for as long as you need." Later that day, we drove to a small chapel on the edge of town. It wasn't a wedding, not yet, but we had promised ourselves something just as sacred, a future built on truth, not appearances. The chapel was simple, decorated with daisies and soft golden lights. A few close friends gathered, people who had known me, not as Daniel's sister, not as a loser, but as Olivia. Just Olivia. As we stood at the front, exchanging vows and whispers only we could hear, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Rachel's eyes shimmered as she said, "I choose you. Not for your success, not for your money, but because you've always been enough." My voice trembled as I answered, "And I choose you, because you saw me when no one else did." We sealed it not with a grand kiss or applause, but with quiet certainty. A beginning. That evening, back at our house, I walked through the rooms slowly. The walls weren't filled with my parents' voices, or Daniel's mocking laughter. They were filled with mine, with Rachel's, with the sound of building a life I had carved myself. I paused by the fireplace. On the mantel, a small framed photo sat, me and Rachel at the park, laughing with ice cream cones in our hands. Beside it was a journal, not the one I had once planned to give my father, but a new one I had bought for myself. Its first page read, "This story is mine." I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. For years, I had begged to belong at a table where there was no seat for me. But I had built a new table now, one where love and respect were the only requirements. And as I turned to see Rachel smiling at me from the kitchen, her auburn hair catching the light, I realized I didn't need their approval anymore. Because freedom isn't when your family finally sees you. Freedom is when you finally see yourself.